up, nerds and nerdettes and wee little nerdlings all? It's your buddy Big Johnny G, the Two Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us here on How to Play Legends Untold. Now, if this is not your first try, your first attempt to play, your first gaming session of this, if this is not your first, then please continue along with this video. If this is your first, however, you may want to go check out our short setup video that we did. Otherwise, if this isn't your first, let's just jump right into this. So the game is broken up into four phases. Now remember, this game has a lot of handy-dandy little cards that will help remind you of rules as well as how the turn goes. So the first phase is the scouting phase. In the scouting phase, you're first going to determine whether you are staying in your current location or if you want to move. If you're going to stay in your current location, then we're going to have to skip ahead to phase 3. So let's not do that at the moment. Let's say that we're going to be moving. Because if you stay where you are, then you skip the adventure phase and just go to the exploration phase. So let's continue with the scouting phase. After you've determined that you are going to, in this case, leave, the next thing you need to do is determine the marching order. There are encounters and effects in the game that will be determined who is the victim of these things by placement. So in this case, let's go with our gutter snipe to scout and our laborer to guard. So now the next thing you want to do is determine what exit that you're going to leave from and whether you're going to try to sneak or not. Sneaking I'm going to talk about right after this this next part. But for right now, yes, you determine where you're going to leave from, and that's going to change what could happen. That's going to change the possibility of your sneak roll or not sneak roll or however you're doing it, because you're either going into very well lit areas, partially lit, or not lit at all. This card is showing this exit here as dark, while the two sides are partially lit. So you're going to make your decision on where you're going to go. Once you decide that, you're going to be drawing a location card. And you're going to align it, the feet, to the exit that you were using. And you could really kind of do it any way you want. Make it curl or go straight, or however you want to build the board out and however you have room on your table. Now, a moment ago, just before I drew the location card, I had mentioned you were deciding whether you want to sneak or not, and this is going to make a difference. It is important for the readiness chart, because your roll is going to determine where you are on it. And how you determine the roll is on the location card you just entered. Each location will show a target number for the lighting that you came from, whether it's going to be bright, whether it's going to be partially lit, or whether it's going to be dark. So in this case, we're coming from partially lit, so that would be a 9 difficulty, which is going to be rolled against 3 dice. Now, if I was sneaking, then I would be able to add a +2 to this roll. 4, 7, 8, with a difficulty of 9. So in this instance, we are 1 or below the target number, so we are coming in careless. Now, if we had sneaked, then we would be 1 over, which puts us between 0 and +3, which is bold. Now, every time you are finishing up your scouting phase, you're going to have to spend time. And time is spent by spending an encounter card and not looking at it. just discarding it. Now, if you scouted, it's going to cost you 2 of your cards. Now, this is a big deal because when you get through all of the cards and you have just 1 left, that must be encountered. And after that, it is completely discarded from the game. And then shuffle up the events that you did not look at, that got discarded blindly, and set them back out, and your timer continues. If you get to a point where you have quite literally spent and gone through the event of every single card in this deck, well, the game's not over, but it might as well be. Because you won't be able to do anything that requires time at all, including camping, resting, healing your abilities. It's really, even though it's not game over, it's pretty much going to be game over for you. So be careful and watch the time. Watch that event deck. That concludes the scouting phase and moves us towards the adventure phase. Unless, of course, during the scouting phase you decided not to change locations, then you're going to be jumping to exploration phase, which is coming up next. But let's get right into the adventure phase. As the adventure phase moves forward, it begins with the resolve obstacles. There is usually an obstacle in the way of the new location card. Drawing from the top of the obstacle deck, you will find either a trap, or a trial that has to be dealt with. In the case of this trial, Icy Blackness, we find a party basic test. So the first thing that means is every member of the party will have to make an attempt. So they have a choice between balance, swim, or climb, with their grace ability, their brawn ability, or their brawn ability. Next to each of those listings, you will find an icon which shows what happens. Either time is lost, damage is taken, or both. You will also see icons on the side of the card, on the right-hand side in the middle. These 2 symbols, respectively, top to bottom, show a flood or +3 alert. Now, the room that we entered, the filter room, already has the icon of flood on it. This means that certain cards or abilities that have the flood icon will take effect if they're drawn or used. The symbol below that, the +3, next to the alert symbol, means that if we had entered this area alert, we would get a +3 on our rolls. Now, the party has the option of not taking the trial. You cannot move forward, but you can spend the time to go back to your previous location. While performing the test, it is possible to score a critical hit, so to speak. If you score 2 points or higher than you needed to pass this test, then you can choose one player who hasn't taken the test yet this turn and give them an automatic pass. Keep a close eye on the columns to the right of the trials. The first column, the green column, is what you spend if you pass the test. The second column next to it, the red column, is what happens if you fail the test. Dealing with a trap is dependent on what your readiness is: alert, bold, or careless. If you are careless, then you're going to have to immediately apply the effects of the bottom result of the card with the red background. And then you can consider that the trap is resolved and discard it. However, if you are coming in bold or alert, it's a little different. If you're coming in as a bold party, then you must choose to attempt one of the tests that you see printed on the card. If the party entered into the location alert, then they can either choose to attempt one of the tests printed on it, or they can spend 1 time to retreat to a previous location. Now keep in mind that you're going to be seeing symbols in the top right-hand corner of the card on a little banner. In this case, what looks like a gem next to the ancient skeleton. As you will note, our gutter snipe here has a skill, a talent of explorer, and that has a matching symbol on the banner on the top right of its card corner. This indicates mastery in a talent, and when that's the case, you get to roll 4 dice. But you're not adding up all 4 dice. You're rolling 4 dice and discarding 1. In this case, I imagine it would be the 1. And this carries through all cards, all tests, obstacles, foes, discoveries, anything that you would be making a roll for. If you have a matching symbol to what you're rolling against, you're considered to have mastery. Now, there are going to be some parts in the game where you're going to be in a weakened condition, and when that's the case, you're going to be rolling 4 dice, but you're going to be having to take away the highest die there. Next, you're going to resolve any foe cards that the location indicates, and to do that, you're going to have to find a foe in the adventure deck, and you will go through that until either, that's a discovery, that can be put off to the side, you're going to keep going until, okay, this is a treasure. A treasure, that's what I'm going to win if I defeat the encounter. I have to find the encounter first, and this is a booby trap, not an encounter. But we will have to face the booby trap before dealing with the encounter. So this deals the same way that we dealt with the barriers. As we just discussed traps, I won't go into that again. But always remember to see if you have a mastery in something. But after that is dealt with, you will continue until you find a foe, which is indicated by that symbol right there. And then you will be ready for your encounter to resolve the foe. Combat, unless stated otherwise, is dealt with 3 6-sided dice, and however they're modified. If you're coming into this battle and you have advantage, you're going to be at a +2. If you have disadvantage, you're going to be at a -2. You will also want to check for ranged and melee combat modifiers that you will find on the left-hand side of the foe card. And don't forget to check you may have other cards in play that will be giving you bonuses to help your roll. Let's say the follower was making an attack with her rough staff, and she rolled a 5, 6, and a 3, for a total of 14. Now you're going to check to see what of the outcomes that equals. Looking at the right side of the rough staff card, you will see that 14 falls in between 13 and 15. 13 is a strike, and 15 is a critical. This falls in between the two, so that would make it a strike, which will inflict damage upon the target. Going down the column, the symbols mean critical, which you inflict damage on the target, and you also give the advance result to the next attacker in line. Strike, as I just said, inflicts damage at the target. Next you have advance. So you don't actually hit the target, but you do get them to back up and become open, so to speak. So that gives the next attacker an advantage. The crossed swords is trade blows. This is a melee only ability. Both the hero and the creature inflict damage on each other. The shield symbolizes pushback, also a melee only possibility. The next attacker gains either disadvantage, a hero, or advantage. The broken arrow, which is on ranged only, you don't find that on the rough staff card, means it's a miss and there is no effect. The bottom symbol, that looks like the broken heart with a sword through it, is failure. The hero inflicts damage on a melee hero. Failing this, the attacking hero himself or herself takes the damage. All characters start the game with a basic knife, and your abilities with your weapons will be dependent on what weapon is in your hand, whether it is the knife or whether you have another weapon that you've used in exchange. Always use the column for the proper weapon you're using at the time. And now let's talk about damage. Damage is tracked differently for the monsters as it is for the heroes. Whenever an encounter, like this Lizardkin Watcher, is going to take damage, you're going to put down a damage token to make sure that you keep track of that. But you're going to have to keep track of all the damage, because these cards sometimes represent more than just one. The bottom of these cards show the number of players, if you're 1, 2, 3, or 4 players in the game. And the numbers below those icons show you how many Lizardkin there are and when they will flee. So in the case of a 1-player game, there's 2 of them, and when there's 1 left, it will flee. In this case, we have set up for a 3-player game, so there's 3 of them who will flee when there's 1 left. And each has 1 health. So this 1 damage is the equivalent of taking out 1 of the 3 Lizardkin Watchers. Now, the first thing that the party is going to want to do is they're going to want to check and see if they get a surprise on the monster when they encounter it. And this is checked by the icon underneath the fist on the top left of the monster card. In this case, we see the Lizardkin Watchers have a 12. And the party will take 3d6, and they will get to modify this depending on if they were sneaking, they'll get a +2. If they were coming in from a dark area, then they'll get a +2. Or if they were coming in from a bright area, they're going to get a -2. So they're going to make the roll and try to beat that 12. In this case, they were not sneaking. They were not coming in from darkness. They were coming in from shadow. So there's no modifiers. 5, 6, 7, and 8. So in this case, they would have failed that surprise roll. Having failed that test, we will be going straight to combat, and the foes would be getting a surprise bonus. Now, if the test result that I rolled instead was equal to, or even up to 3 points higher, so in this case, if it was between a 12 and a 15, then combat would proceed as normal, but neither side would have surprise for the engagement round of combat. Now, again, if that roll was different, if in this case if it was 4 or higher, then that would actually give us a couple of choices. We'd be able to spend the time to retreat to our previous location, and to remind yourself that the foe is there, you're going to put the monster's card on the location where it was encountered. If the party returns to that location later in the game, that same foe is still going to be there, and you're going to have to make that surprise roll all over again. And the other option is to engage the foe. You get to proceed into combat, but you, the party, will actually have surprise for that engagement round. So if the party is surprised by the foe, then keep in mind that all ranged foes are going to get an advantage during the engagement round. That also means that the melee heroes are going to have a disadvantage during the engagement round. Now, to enter the engagement round, it will consist of 4 steps. Choosing your attacks, a ranged attack, melee attack, and then you check morale of the monsters. When choosing attacks, each hero is going to select what weapon or weapon skill that they are going to use during their attack. If they choose a melee weapon, then they are a melee hero. If they choose a ranged attack, then they are a ranged hero. The foes also are listed as ranged or melee creatures. It is a keyword depicted on the top of their card. Then after choosing the attacks, ranged attacks always go first. And unless something states otherwise, heroes will be going first before the creatures do. If there are multiple heroes and multiple creatures with ranged attacks, then you're going to be bouncing back and forth, alternating between hero attack and creature attack. After the ranged attacks, we get the melee attacks. Now, monsters never actually get a melee attack. And you are rolling to see how you determine the outcome of the fight with your opponent. At the end of each combat round, we get to see that if any of the monsters are still standing, whether they're still going to be fighting or attempting to flee. In this case, with 2 of the 3 down, That leaves one left in this 3-player game, which means that one is going to attempt to flee. And in this, there is no attempt. It just happens. Yes, if the number is equal to or less than what is showing, then the foe, and the foe isn't unique, then the foe will flee. You get to resolve the card and place it in the discard pile. Now, things are a little bit different if it's a unique foe that gets to this fleeing point, this breakaway point. The heroes may elect to attack it as it tries to flee, as it's running away to try to get another strike in on it. And that allows one more round of combat to play out, with each hero then gaining advantage in this extra round of combat. If the heroes kill all the remaining creatures, the foe is defeated. The card is resolved, and the card is removed from the game. Yes, from the game, placed back in the box. If the heroes do not kill all the remaining creatures, then the foe flees successfully and is placed in the discard pile. But my friends, it's not just the creatures, the monsters, the encounters that are going to get a chance to flee in combat. No. During the morale step, you yourself, the player, can opt to have the party flee. Spend a time and retreat to the previous location. The monsters you were battling are going to stay on that location spot where they were fought, and they will be there until dealt with. Or if you have enough time, try to find a new long way around. When using your talents or abilities during combat, remember to always check what is in the red dot, if there is a red icon, such as Bloodlust up here has the same icon as Take the Pain, which shows that can be used in melee combat. Now, Take the Pain also has an exclamation, which means this does not have to be used before the combat roll is made. You can make the use of Take the Pain by exhausting it and putting it on its side, even in the middle of combat. Just as a party member will put a card on its side to show it is exhausted or just temporarily used, when they take damage, they are going to flip a card over. It's their choice which card gets flipped over, but one of your cards for each damage you take will get flipped over. So you are literally losing access to an ability. This game doesn't use hit points, health points, assistant tracker like that. It uses this as a way to gauge consciousness. And slowly you are getting worn away, worn down, each time you take damage, until eventually you're going to be out. Finally, for the adventure phase, you're going to resolve discoveries. You're going to draw from the adventure deck, and any foes you get, you'll discard. Any treasure items you get, you will set aside, because that's what you could potentially earn. If you get booby traps, you deal with them, just like you did before the encounter. And then you're looking for this symbol up here to show a discovery. And take note, again, of icons, such as the symbol in the right middle-ish side of the card, which shows a treasure +1. Which means if you give up a treasure card during this turn, during this discovery, if you give this up, then you're going to get a +1 bonus on these rolls. And these rolls are how you are going to resolve the card, and how far you, in this case for this card, how far you want to push your results, push your luck, so to speak. Now, if the location card that you are on shows any barrier symbols, then you're going to be drawing one of the barrier cards for each symbol on that location card. And also, don't forget to place search tokens in any search areas. At that point, you may then attempt to resolve any of the barrier cards. In this case, Wisp Wall. Now you see this has the Fey symbol up in the top corner, and our Laborer's Skill of Fey Companion has the same there. So don't forget what I was saying earlier about mastery. So the Laborer would be able to roll 4 dice and discard the lowest roll when making an attempt. When dealing with a search zone on your location card, you're going to have to make a decision whether you want a careful search or a quick search. Now, the big difference here is that a careful search is going to cost you 1 time, while a quick search won't cost you any. Now, in order to perform the search, you're going to draw 3 cards from the adventure deck. Now, when drawing from the adventure deck for your search, you're going to discard any card that comes up that isn't loot or a booby trap. Yes, once again, booby traps will always have to be dealt with first. But after that, you will simply draw and you will discard until you find yourself a card that depicts loot, like the sewer key. After the search is completed, then take your search icon, the barrel token, and flip it over to its open side, signifying that this area has been searched. We then end with the rest phase. During the rest phase, the party is going to get a chance to restore all exhausted talents and any exhausted kits or other items that they have that get exhausted. And this symbolizes the characters refreshing themselves and preparing themselves for the continued quest. After resting, the party may also decide to camp. For each 2 times spent, each hero may heal 1 drained talent. Any heroes who have been poisoned get to remove that condition. Always remember that if there's a discrepancy with the rules on a card, the card will always take precedence. But otherwise, in a nutshell, that's it. That is how you play Legends Untold. Thank you very much for checking these videos out, everybody. I'm your buddy Big John G with 2 Gun Pixie presents Legendary Gaming. And my friends, I am out of here.